Flight of the Navigator has proved to be a rather difficult movie to review. Not that it's a complicated story by any means, it's actually rather simple, but even at its very modest 1 hour 30-minute runtime, there's a lot of build-up for the first half, so to keep from using a ridiculous amount of time to explain the details, and to avoid any major plot spoilers if you haven't seen it, I'll try and condense it down as much as I can without giving too much away. It's 1978 in Florida and 12-year-old David Freeman sets out one night to pick up his younger brother Jeff from a friend's house, but he takes a fall into a deep ditch and is knocked unconscious. When he comes to, he heads home only to find that he's actually been missing for the last 8 years. He has no memory of those missing years, and even more bizarrely, he hasn't aged a single day. He's reunited with his now significantly older mum and dad and his now teenaged brother. At the same time, a UFO has crashed into nearby electricity pylons and appears to have been rendered inactive. The ship is quickly confiscated by NASA and taken to their base. After some examinations, it's discovered David has some rather intimate knowledge of the UFO buried in his subconscious. NASA is informed of this discovery and they convince him and his family to let them try and dig deeper to uncover what has happened to him after all this time. Their initial plan is to have a 48-hour window to gather the info they need, but after another round of tests it becomes evident that David's head is chock full of valuable information, including vast amounts of undiscovered star systems and planets. It also becomes clear that 48 hours isn't going to be enough time. Thanks to a heads up from a NASA employee, Carolyn McAdams, played by young Sarah Jessica Parker, David realizes that NASA intends to keep him there for as long as possible, and all he wants to do now is go home. While at the base, he keeps hearing a voice calling to him from the distant hangar outside of his room, asking for help. This ghostly voice instructs him to get inside one of the base's robotic delivery systems, and it takes him to the hangar which houses the UFO. As he walks around it studying its shape, the front of the UFO dissolves and forms a set of stairs and an entrance to the craft. David gets inside and he is finally introduced to the voice that's been calling to him, a highly advanced alien artificial intelligence. The AI informs David that it's lost all of its navigational databases when it crashed into the electricity pylons, and it needs those star charts and systems stored in his head in order to complete its mission, hence why the AI calls David the Navigator. NASA security is alerted to the breach and runs in and surrounds the ship. David agrees to help the alien, who he discovers is a species called Trimaxian, and David affectionately nicknames him Max. The pair escape the base and their adventure begins. Flight of the Navigator is, well, it's great, to put it simply. It's a very well structured film with each scene flowing nicely into the next, and it's great at explaining the mystery as we go along, without it being too heavy on the exposition. Its runtime is perfect at 1.5 hours, and it never becomes a chore to sit through. David, played by actor Joey Kramer, is a delight to have on screen. This character is really being put through the ringer. He's a 12-year-old boy stuck in a time that doesn't belong to him. He's completely lost and confused and terrified, not even able to take true security with the people he loves so dearly because of how much they've aged without him. The world makes no sense to him anymore. Kramer effortlessly brings a stinging kind of emotion to his character, especially during the scenes when he comes home to discover his family no longer lives there and finds a strange elderly couple living there instead, and the scene at the hospital with his mum, dad and brother. All he wants to do is go home, but slowly realises that this timeline isn't where he belongs. Child actors are a weird bunch. You either love them or you find them annoying, and Kramer definitely isn't annoying. His level of professionalism at that age is quite something to see and deserves its due respect. I did some reading about Joey Kramer after I rewatched this film, and the guy definitely struggled after the movie was released. He was arrested and charged with a bank robbery and fell into drugs. However, today he seems to be doing well for himself. There's a great documentary out there called Life After the Navigator which explores this a lot further. Flight of the Navigator's score by Alan Silvestri is excellent. It marries synthesizers, drums and other orchestral instruments into a conglomerate of pure happiness for the ears, and each track fits nice and snug into the scene that it's supporting. The Ship Beckons fills us with mystery and a touch of foreboding. Robot Romp with its electric drums and synths portray a feeling of adventure and adds some gorgeous mass to those Floridian sunsets. Flight dishes out bucket loads of urgency and anxiety thanks to its fast tempo and use of strings, And finally, the main theme itself, which just simply captures that wondrous feeling of friendship, love and innocence. And following on from those themes, the bond that David and Max form is something special. What starts off as a simple I need you, you need me situation soon becomes an endearing story of friendship. When Max scans David's brain to get the necessary star chart stored in there, he also siphons some human personality traits that merge with his own consciousness. This allows David and Max to form a closer friendship as they go, and they start to learn more about each other. There's some great puppetry in here too, shown during a scene where Max shows David the small collection of other life forms that he's gathered for study throughout the galaxies he's visited. And every movie like this has to have a cute creature that we fall in love with, and we get one with this little dude, a life form called a puckmarin that David takes a liking to. As for the special effects, well, they're actually very decent for the time, and the movie's credited as being the first to use reflection mapping that was used on the UFO. The practical effects look great too, like the aforementioned puppetry and the ship itself. The floating steps still look great to this day, and the interior and exterior of the ship still hold up. Flight of the Navigator is a staple from my childhood. As a kid I was obsessed with UFOs and aliens, and I watched as many films and read as many books as I could about them. This was one of my late granddad's favourite films too. He had a peculiar fascination with Florida and he would always watch it when it came on TV, usually on a lazy weekend afternoon. Obviously being a working class Englishman, he never travelled out of the country, but had the opportunity to visit Florida thanks to his boss who owned a house out there. And the following 2 years we were fortunate and lucky enough to go with him for 2 family holidays. As an English kid, it was really something special to visit America and see it with my own eyes, rather than on the big screen. I know that Florida has been mean to hell and back in the modern age, but I fucking enjoyed it and I loved the state itself. So not only is Flight of the Navigator a great film on its own, there's just that extra sprinkling of goodness for me when I watch it, because it reminds me of my old granddad. Simply put, Flight of the Navigator is just a brilliant film.